Hello, hello. Today I've got a Lexi versus Dash game for you guys, and I'm going to preface this by saying that I did not play very well. Full disclosure, this was my second time running this Ice Lexi deck, and turns out Lexi's a pretty complicated hero, so I make tons of mistakes, but that's the point of this analysis, right? Is to learn from these mistakes. So, without any more intro, let's get into it. And again, I'm against an opponent whose pronouns are they, them, so if you talk about their plays at all in the chat, please make sure you use the correct pronouns. Right. So we've gotten into the game. My opponent won the dice roll, and they elected to go first. Makes sense. You kind of don't really want Ranger to go first, let them set up. Although with Voltaire, maybe that's changed a little, because, you know, I can still load an arrow in my arsenal on my opponent's turn. So my opponent starts with classic dash stuff, just loading up items. Okay. So they pitch the high octane to an item, which doesn't give them extra steam counter, but it gets a card out of their hand. I guess they just didn't want to sit on it, didn't want to arsenal it so early. So this is supposed to happen before the arsenal. When they pass with the action point, I activate Voltaire and load an arrow in. So I can immediately start with a 5-card hand. Deciding what to pitch here, and you can already tell I'm very confused. Alright, so I pitched the Frostfang. Yeah, I think. Oh yeah, I guess that makes sense because I already have a fusing card with in the Icequake, and I already have another arrow, so there's no point having another attack here. Cool. Comes to my turn. I take up Tunic, draw up. Okay, so this is nice to see. I have an arrow in hand, an arrow in arsenal, and enough resources to play for both of them. With you know, with these two blues. Although I only need one of them. Cool. So I load an endless arrow, give it go again, and now this is coming in for 4. And I really like starting an endless arrow because the opponent doesn't block it when I already have an arrow in my arsenal. This goes back to my hand, and I can immediately just play it and just do the exact same thing, and still threaten one more attack after that from the arrow I already have in arsenal. Cool, so they only block for 3. Yeah, I believe they only block for 3, because I think I remember this arrow going into my hand. There was an argument for playing the Icequake. Because, I mean, I don't get to fuse my Chilling Ice Vein, but if I'm coming with at least 2 arrows in, you know, they get the Icequake buff of giving my opponent a Frostbite if either of them hit. So, but that's might be better than just having the fuse on the Chilling Ice Vein. Although then again, then I don't end with an Ice Cutter in Arsenal, which means I can't give them a Frostbite on the next turn. So, pros and cons to both. I think I prefer arseling the Icequake. It's a little early in the game, and there's no point being so aggressive right now. Yeah, so we see that the Endless Arrow came back to my hand, and I just immediately loaded again with Voltaire and just shot it again. And this is a bit of a tough block for my opponent. They don't block this at all. I mean, they know there's a Chilling Ice Vein coming in, so they want to block that. So will they give me the Endless Arrow again? Or use some of the armor? Okay, so they let the Endless Arrow hit. And I've used Voltaire twice this turn, so my only other player remaining is Chilling Ice Vein. And they block it completely. And since the Chilling Ice Vein was already in Arsenal, I couldn't like give it any buff from Voltaire. So yeah, go ahead and load in the Ice card. Right, they use a turn just coming in with a pistol. Or rather, they start their turn coming in with a pistol. And this is the thing with Lexi, right? You know, you have these like 5-card hands, and it's sequencing them correctly and also making sure you set up a little for the next turn. So it makes this hero very complicated. Yeah, so I start with Lexi's ability. Without that, I don't have an extra arsenal slot from New Horizons, so that's typically how I need to start all of my turns. And I'm considering playing out my 3 of a kind, but I think with um I've generally found that I prefer playing 3 of a kind off of Tunic. And I already do have an Endless Arrow, so yeah, although looking at the rest of my hand, it's like I would need to pitch the Blizzard Bolt for resources, so if my opponent blocks out my Endless Arrow, I don't get it back and I just don't have any more attacks. So maybe I should 3 of a kind? Or I think the better play is load the Endless Arrow, pitching the Blizzard Bolt, give it go again. If my opponent blocks out the Endless Arrow, then I play 3 of a kind. Yeah, that's probably the better line. Which I don't think I take, because like I said, I made a lot of mistakes in this video. Okay, so I start with an Ice Quake, pitching the Blizzard Bolt. Yeah, that would make my Endless Arrow come in for quite a lot of damage. It'll come in for 7. They definitely give it go again. Use Voltaire, Endless Arrow for 7. Go again. And if it hits, create a Frostbite. So I think my opponent decides to finally block out the Endless Arrow. It already came in for 5 damage the previous turn, and now it's threatening another hit. So this Endless Arrow's honestly done its job already. Yep, so they block it out. And they know they only have 1 resource left, so so if they're trying to gauge what's in my hand, I can use Voltaire again, put an arrow, but unless that arrow is a 0-cost arrow, I'll need to pitch my other card to play it. So they decide they can just, they don't really need to worry about another arrow. And then I just don't play my 3 of a kind, but I think that was probably the correct play. Because I still had the Icequake buff going. Yeah. I just got very caught up in next turn I have Tunic and I can 3 of a kind off of Tunic, and that's really efficient. But I think it turns out having that many cards in your hand is not even that great in Lexi, because you can only load your bow so many times a turn. I can only load Voltaire twice a turn. So, if I, 3 of a kind off a Tunic and I have 6 cards in hand, but I can only play 2 attacks that turn anyway, it's not very efficient. So that was my first mistake there, just getting too hung up on the value of 3 of a kind of a Tunic. Well, I say first mistake. First mistake that I'm like notice and probably were more before that. Oh, okay, so they're coming with a CNC. So this is a tough one. So I could block it out with 2 arrows, since I know I'm going 3 of a kind off a Tunic next turn anyway. But then I'm really banking on drawing at least 1 arrow, ideally 2. Because if I don't, then my next turn is a 3 of a kind pass. So it'd be pretty risky to block with both my arrows, but that's the only way I can block this out unless I use my Perch Grapplers, which I think is a little too early in the game to use. So I think I'd like to just lose this Weave Ice. Okay, so I choose to block with just one card, minimize the damage I take, and keep at least one arrow in hand for my 3 of a kind, and lose the Weave Ice. Cool. Yeah, so CNC will take 2 cards from you. Like, if kind of anyway, you either use 2 cards to block, or if you just block 1 card, you lose the arsenal. Or you take 6 damage and lose your arsenal, so yeah. Also take up Tunic and go ahead with my 3 of a kind. Draw up. I did draw a blue, that's nice. I did draw a second 3 of a kind. Which I can't play right now, obviously, because it's not in my arsenal. And I already did a 3 of a kind. So, Bolt and Shot, I really like starting a Bolt and Shot. It's, it threatens decent damage, it's 5 damage with Go again. And if they use cards to block, then my next arrow, which typically threatens an on-hit, like in this case, Chilling Ice Vein, it's, you know, they would need to use the rest of their hand to block it. Also, having Bolt and Shot, because it's a 0-cost arrow, means off of 1 blue, I got to make that play. The Bolt and Shot and Chilling Ice Vein. So it's fused. My opponent, I think, misunderstood what Chilling Ice Vein does. I think they thought it was Blizzard Bolt, which gives them a Frostbite. But Chilling Ice Vein, you know, makes them discard instead. So that's what they thought at first. And then I pointed out, no, it's discard, so then they took it back. And the Chilling Ice Vein's coming in for 6. So they take the 6 and they just pitch to the discard effect. And Arsenal Frostfang. Cool. It's a pretty strong turn there for us. Bolt and Shot honestly makes turns like pretty smooth. Okay, so my opponent just uses the turn to Arsenal. And so we've pretty firmly have tempo here right now. But now we draw into this all red hand. And so that's not the best, but we do have a second 3 of a kind. So we could play it here. Although I'm honestly not sure whether we should be playing it here because, you know, Dash isn't exactly an aggro matchup. And 3 of a kind is one of our key cards in the deck. It really lets us have explosive turns. So there's an argument for pitching it and seeing it in the second cycle of a deck, which this game might go to. And then we get play 3 of a kind later when we probably have the resources to support it. But then again, since we have tempo right now, playing 3 of a kind here probably gets us into the resources to play this Bolt and Shot and the Flake Out. So I think it's a bit hard to tell what the correct play here is. I think I do like to pitch the 3 of a kind. So electing to have a better turn later when we see it again, rather than sort of like blowing our load right now. But the other thing is pitching a red is a very telltale sign to your opponent that you don't really have the resources to support your hand. And so, you know, they can sort of safely block there and not really worry about a second arrow coming in because I pitched a red. So maybe it was better to just play the 3 of a kind and just keep the pressure, because now my opponent for the first time has like 3 cards in hand and an arsenal. We did manage to arsenal and ice cards, so that's always nice. Come in a pistol shot, we just take it. And they give it go again. Pretty standard dash turns. And that's the thing, right? Because dash plays like this, I found it very difficult to decide whether I should be using my other 3 of a kind that early. At least the way my opponent has been playing so far seems to be quite like they just want to grind me out. And so I want to make sure there is still power left in my deck for the second cycle. So just take the second pistol shot. They give it go again. And here's where it's one of those times where, you know, you're playing Lexi, you have a 6-card hand, and you're just like, okay, how do I sequence this? How do I sequence this effectively? That's what, yeah. That's what makes Lexi really fun to play, but also difficult, right? Coming to zip ahead, but I think I have a pretty good turn with these 6 cards, so I think I just take this zip ahead. Okay, so I remember making a really bad play here. Oh, right. So we point out we both forgot that my opponent actually had a frostbite, and you know hasn't paid for it yet. So yeah, we decided to just roll it back, just that last one. So I don't take the 3 damage from the zipper hit, and I think they just pitched that zipper hit to load up an item or something. It is a blue zipper hit. Okay, and then they come up with the pistol. Okay, so I remember making a really bad play here. So what? Oh, this is quite embarrassing. So I just, for some reason, was very hesitant to play to play my red flake out when I played Weave Ice already, because Weave Ice already gives my next fuse attack dominate, and flake out, you know, when you fuse it, gives itself dominate. So I was like, oh no, this dominate value, I'm losing this dominate value on my Weave Ice. So, you know, I'm not gonna play flake out immediately after and play this chilling ice, this blue chilling ice vein instead. You know, if the chilling ice vein was red, I think that play might make a bit more sense. But the chilling ice vein is blue, so I kind of lost a lot of power here. And because just because of the way the resources worked out, I can't actually play this flake out unless I, you know, pitch this red ice quake, which means I don't get to arsenal a new ice card. So yeah, this was not a good play. Um so yeah, so then I realized, oh, okay, I can't play this flake out unless I pitch this ice quake, and then all I have is a revealed frostfang in my arsenal, so I don't get to flip up to give them a frostbite the next turn. So I decided to just pitch this flake out and come out with the frostfang. I think the much better play would have been to pitch my blue chilling ice vein, to play this ice quake and play the weave ice, and then load the flake out and come in with it and fuse it, which would have let me arsenal my channel lake frigid next to my frostfang. So it gives me an ice card to reveal the next turn. It lets me keep my channel lake frigid in there and the frostfang in there. So next time I have a 6-card hand, and I would have come in with a much stronger attack this turn. So to be fair, this turn, this was it like a 6 damage chilling ice vein and a 5 damage frostfang. It's not like it was a super weak turn, because the chilling ice vein threatens an on hit, and then the frostfang that comes afterwards threatens its own on hit and the chilling ice vein's on hit, because that's how chilling ice vein works. So it's not like this turn was weak, but I think it could have been much better with the other play I suggested, because it also sets us up better for the next turn, where I have 6 cards again instead of 5. Yep, so they take that, and then they need to lose their last card because they had 2 floating for the Frostfangs on hit, but they didn't have an extra floating for the Chilling Ice Veins additional on hit. So they had to pitch that. So I did get their whole hand, but you know, I didn't have an extra card in Arsenal. Okay, so right, so now, yes, I remember this one. So I had my no arrow turn. And you know, I could sit here and be like, oh man, I didn't draw an arrow, that's so unlucky. But I mean, I misplayed the previous turn, and if I did the correct play the previous turn, I would have Frostfang in my arsenal still. So, you know, it's I would say that's on me there. But also, secondly, and more importantly, I think, is that if you're trying to like bring Lexi to like a tournament or something, you know, you're playing like 6-7 games throughout the day, probably more. You need to know how to navigate these turns. And like you will get those turns throughout the day where you just draw no arrows. It's just, you know, that's one of the things about playing Ranger. And unless you learn how to navigate these turns, you know, you're not gonna be able to play like Lexi effectively. And I can safely say I did not navigate this turn well. I panicked. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna lose all my tempo, which of course I do. But you know, there's a way to do it where you set yourself up for success later on. And I don't think I did. So what I'm thinking about right now is my pitch stack, like what I pitched the previous turn. Because if I pitched a non-attack the previous turn and I just pitched 2 Weave Ices now to play 1 Channel Lake Frigid, then I have put 3 non-attacks in a row at the bottom of my deck, and I'm just risking myself to come back to a turn like this later on. So because of that, I want to pitch. I'm thinking maybe I should pitch just the 1 Channel Lake Frigid to play the other Channel Lake Frigid and just arsenal a Weave Ice and hold a Weave Ice. The issue with that is, do I think this game's gonna go long enough at this point where I will see the second cycle of my deck where, you know, having a few non-attacks together, like, does that actually matter? And again, this is where the matchup you're playing is very relevant, right? So we're against Dash. We're both at half health, and I haven't seen a high octane turn yet. So we can sort of expect that's coming soon. And I think for that, it's probably better to have my other Channel Lake Frigid ready, right? Instead of just instead of, you know, pitching it there. And I know the previous turn I already pitched 1 Channel Lake Frigid, so now both Channel Lake Frigids are at the bottom of my deck. So unless I can keep this going until the high octane turn, I'm gonna be taking a high octane turn without a Channel Lake Frigid as like protection. So that's the other thing about playing Lexi. You really need to be aware of the threats your opponent can put out, what your opponent's going to try and do to steal tempo back, and use your Channel Lake Frigids effectively in preparation for those, right? So I was thinking, oh no, this is going to grind out for a little bit longer. So I'll see my Channel Lake Frigids again. Yeah. So then I ended up doing that play, which, in my opinion, was a mistake. And they come at high speed impact and throttle. And the other thing with Lexi is that once you start blocking, it's really hard for you to get tempo back. So I kind of just need to take this. So I flip up a Weave Ice, give them a Frostbite. And over here, yeah, I fall into, well, I guess that same concern I was talking about earlier. I could keep this Channel Lake Frigid going by pitching both Weave Ice and Winter's Bite this turn. And, you know, it's very easy to do that when you have Shock Traumas. You can just, like, pitch into it. So it's not a concern of how I'm gonna play things. It's about whether I want to do it, because then I'm sending more non-attacks in a row to the bottom. Which I think at this point is not something I should be worrying about. I think at this point, I should have been more concerned with just taking the tempo back. And if that requires me to just pitch my non-attacks, then I think I should have just gone ahead and done it. Especially since, I mean, if, like, I have Weave Ice and Icequake and then the Weave Ice in hand. Although probably the Weave Ice in hand I'll need to use to fuse. But just that together means that I can come out with a huge attack this turn with a good on hit, and then potentially keep my Channel Lake Frigid going, which just gives me a tempo back like immediately. Okay, so I'm finally out of the tank, and I decide to pitch my yellow Chilling Ice Vein. Again, I think I just made the wrong call for this matchup, being very worried that this is going to be grindy, and I'm going to see the second cycle of my deck. So, yeah, I end up pitching that. And I load the Blizzard Bolt, and I believe I use the Tunic counter to actually fire it off. And after playing this Blizzard Bolt, I realized I made a... I made a mistake where I think... Yeah, I asked my opponent if I can take this back, and they allowed me to. It's very nice of them. Where I realized that after I fire this Blizzard Bolt, I'm only going to be able to arsenal, like, one of my 2 cards. So I might as well just play one of them first. I think I like to just play the Winter's Bite first before I go ahead with this Blizzard Bolt. Just get to use all the cards in my hand. So my opponent decides to pitch a red Zipper hit to pay for that, and I come in with this Blizzard Bolt fused. So this Blizzard Bolt's coming in for 10 dominate, and on hit, give them 2 frostbites. Yeah. And I get to arsenal this Weavice. But I do lose my Enchantment Lake Frigid. So I remember being quite stumped by this hand as well, because I drew no fuse cards. And that's the other thing, right? If you want to pilot Lexi properly, you need to know what's the best play even in these sorts of hands. Like the very cookie cutter hand is pitch a blue, load an arrow, maybe is a fusing arrow. Play that, and then after load another arrow and like play that as well, fusing. And if you don't get your fusing cards, you still need to know what the optimal play is and not just, get stumped. Well, I got stumped. Okay, so my opponent goes Spark Genius for x equals 0. Yeah. And I just find the Techlo Core. So those additional resources are really going to help against all my taxing effects. And also, good thing for my opponent is that this turn I'm actually not taxing them very much. It's 1 frostbite and everything else is not going to be fused. And again, I think I elect not to use my Weavice because I want that fuse value, which I think is a mistake. I don't completely remember. I really hope I do play out this Weavice right now and not just hold it. But I'm worried past me was very concerned with not losing the Weavice value. Oh, I actually play it. Okay. Alright. So trying to decide which arrow to use. I think I just do the Flake Out. So I ended up using the Blizzard Bolt, and I think it might have been better to use the Flake Out here. Because if the Blizzard Bolt comes in for 4 and they block 6 of it, my Lightning Press, and I Lightning Press it, well I probably shouldn't Lightning Press at that point, I only get 1 extra damage. But Flake Out, since it's coming in for 5 and they block 6, then I get 2 extra damage in from the Lightning Press. Which may not even be the best idea to use Lightning Press when you're not threatening a non-hit. But at the same time, I kind of feel like I don't want his Lightning Press sticking around in my hand. Okay, so I end up arsenaling Lightning Press, which I think is a mistake. I think I should have just Lightning Press there. So then I get to arsenal my arrow and draw new cards. The Lexi's effect off of Lightning Press isn't very important, because Voltaire already gives your arrows go again. And yeah, I get punished for it by drawing another Lightning Press. And having like 2 Lightning Presses, it's just very awkward. Especially since I didn't draw another blue. Yep, so my opponent comes in with the blue 0 to 60, and since the Tech Locale gave them resources, they didn't even need to use a card from their hand to pay for the Frostbite. Okay, so I just take this to from 0 to 60. And they use the Tekla Foundry card, so they're back up to 2 resources. And then they counter a Tomb of Fender, which gives them 5 extra health. So yeah, very strong play by my opponent. And then they get an action point by popping their boots, and yeah. At this point, the game is kind of slipping away. It's like all the past mistakes have been adding up to the point where, I've lost tempo, we're on the same health pool. This is looking kind of scary. Okay, so they come in with this pistol shot, and yeah, at this point, I think I decide I need to start blocking, because with my hand, I can't put a lot of pressure next turn, and I feel like that this turn is going to be pretty huge. So I start blocking, but I make a really grave mistake in the way I block, in that I think the only amount I was able to afford to block was actually just with 1 arrow. And me using the other flake out to block actually locks me in such a bad position. Because, well, firstly, my Lightning Press can't block, so it's just stuck in my hand. I cannot arsenal that Lightning Press, because if I do, then I just have 2 Lightning Presses in my arsenal, and then I can't load anything with Voltaire, unless I draw one of my non-arrow attacks, which has very few of in the deck. I also can't arsenal my Remorseless, because then I still can't load anything with Voltaire, which means I can't load an arrow and give it go again. My only option is just to fire off the Remorseless without any go again, which is just like not enough to get me my tempo back. So blocking with that second arrow, it's a really bad mistake. To the point where I probably oh yeah, and I didn't even realize this mistake until after my opponent was done with their turn. Because if I'd realized it by then, I probably should have just used my Remorseless to block. Yeah. To save myself the 3 health, since my current hand is just useless anyway. So, yeah. This is really bad. This is, yeah. Right, so I pitch away the Lightning Press just to just to get it out of my hand, because having one Lightning Press in Arsenal, I already have a Lightning Press in Arsenal. Yeah, I make the mistake here. I do need to flip my Arsenal card first, because otherwise I don't have an additional Arsenal slot. So my opponent's pointing that out to me. So I go ahead and flip it first. And I load the Remorseless in just so I can get this Lightning Press out of my hand. As I use Volterra to load it in so I can get Lightning Press out of my hand. But this means my next turn is locked. It means my next turn is only basically like probably use a Tunic resource to play the Remorseless from my arsenal and probably also press it. So this means that this turn I'm just using my cards for blocking, which is just not where you want to be at Lexi. And my opponent has a 5-card hand, so this is just just absolutely small brain play by me there. So opponent starts with a pistol shot for 2, and like I said, I'm just like, okay, my cards in hand. I guess the non-attacks could still do something, but it's probably better if I just use them to block and try and fix my mistake, and try and see if I can come back from my mistake later. And they come in a high-speed impact, and I want to block this out because if they give their next attack dominate, then I can't use my cards to block effectively, which is sort of my only option right now with them. So I think I use my Purge Grapplers here to be able to block at least like efficiently. Use the Winter's Bite and Purge Grapplers to block an exact 4. Yep. Yep, I take 1 from the 0 to 60. And then I'm Remorseless, and I'm threatening a Lightning Press on it, of course. So Remorseless is, quite nice against decks that go wide, but except Dash, because Remorseless specifies specifies action cards. So loading up all these pistols and stuff, aren't action cards, so Remorseless won't leak damage that way. It does leak damage on the boost attacks, but, with 2 induction chambers, a plasma purifier, the Dash can just, do a bunch of pistol shots to get around the Remorseless sort of like life drain effect. Whereas like Remorseless against like Viscerai before the turn they go off, or like a Chain or Lightning Briar, if that's still a thing, is really good. Against Dash, less so. So I block for 6 and I press it, so I can get this press out of my arsenal, which has been extremely painful. Also, I had to get Lightning Press out of my arsenal there, otherwise I run into the same issue earlier, where I asked my bolt and shot, and then now I can't load anything else in my arsenal. So I do draw into Pulse here, which is quite nice. So if my opponent doesn't threaten a lot of damage this turn, like if I can still hold my cards and come back with a Pulse turn, I could maybe do something. Yeah. I guess I didn't need to block that early. I could have tried them block later on, see what else they do. Okay, and then they end, and yeah, I think at this point I had to realize that I just need to push damage, and I should just play this pulse instead of trying to worry about like fusing my card, because I think at this point damage is a little more important. So I probably should have just kept the Chilling Ice Vein um, blocked with a Frostlock, because Pulse into Chilling Ice Vein deals more damage than Pulse into Frostlock. And I still have this Bolt and Shot in Arsenal to come in. But unfortunately, I decide to just use a Pulse to fuse. But, you know, there's two things. I'm like thinking I can Arsenal this Pulse, but I'm likely not going to be able to play it unless I threaten enough damage this turn, because I'm probably dying next turn. Also, not having an Arsenal this turn is probably better, so I can use my New Horizon to block without losing too much value. So I don't, arsenaling the Pulse means I don't want to block with New Horizon. I also lose other damage this turn by not playing the Pulse. So just a bad game state call from me there. Also, the fuse on Frostlock does pretty much nothing against Dash. Yep. So we both are the same life total, but my opponent has 5 cards. So if I use the Pulse there, I could threaten them going down to 1, which is, it's easier to come back from. But then they come with a high octane 10. So even if I use Pulse, I probably wasn't surviving this turn. But I still think that was a better play. Yep, don't want to give them Dominate. Also, might as well use a Tuning. I'm never getting another charge of it. Cool, they break even on the Tekla Foundry Heart. Oh, and then they have another Tumor Final. That's just the absolute nail in the coffin right there. Going back up to 9. So yeah, I mean, even if I sequence my pulse, in my opinion, the correct way the previous turn, still would have been a loss. So I think my opponent's just trying to sequence their play correctly so they actually kill me this turn. I think they know for sure they can strip all the cards from my hand. They can try and find the line where it actually kills me, which, yeah. Yep, so I block out all this stuff, and now I have no more cards in hand, and they just need to threaten 5, well, I guess 7 with the New Horizon. They come in for 3. Oh, and yeah, so they just stop after stripping all the cards from my hand, knowing I can't do anything. I just flip over Pulse, give them a Frostbite, like, kind of the best play I had there, and then, yeah. Yep, so they pay to load their pistol, taking into account the Frostbite tax. Yeah, at this point, it's kind of just going through emotion. I do believe that I kind of lost this game a few turns ago. There's just no hope of me getting tempo back. Except potentially that Pulse turn, maybe. Although, no, they had a Tomb of Indal in Arsenal, so unless I was threatening lethal that turn, I wasn't getting tempo back that turn, so. Yep, they're just doing dash things, coming at all the pistol shots, and then. And what do they play? Alright, it's a yellow 0-60. Yeah. I think I just blocked 2 with a 3 of a kind, and then the pistol shot kills me, right? I can block New Horizon, but only blocks 1. Only blocks 2. The pistol's coming in for 3. But they they CNC, so yeah. So even if my Amulet of Ice was a 3 block card, I still just died there. So yeah, that was the game. Many mistakes made, but that's a point. Hopefully we all learned something. And yeah, if you want to play Lexi, you gotta practice more with it, understand opponents' matchups, understand how to try and like make sure you don't lose tempo, understand whether you need to care about your pitch stack, and all that sorts of stuff. So thank you for watching, and you know, post in the comments if you think there was some plays I could have done better, or if there's any comments that I made that you agree or disagree with. Well, thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.